Hello friends and welcome back to JJ Painting. I am JJ and we're back in lockdown now as of the time of recording this video. Yay! Back in lockdown. Oh, it's been so much fun. But anyway, here we are again. So I wanted to make this video because I've been doing a lot of painting in lockdown. I hope a lot of other people have been doing a lot of painting in lockdown. And I wanted to make a video, as you can probably tell, just a little bit about productivity and stuff like that. I know there's tons of those out there, tons of like those self-help videos where, oh, if you just do this and you do that, then you'll be so much more productive. And some of them are all right. Some of them don't work so well for some people. But this is just my take and what I do to stay painting, because I have gotten through quite a lot of models this year. I feel like a machine some days of the week, but it's been good. It's been really good. So I'm just going to give you a handful of tips and bits of my own experience, and hopefully they'll help you out a little bit if you want to get some painting done, even if it's just finishing that army you've had for the last 5 years, or you've got a new army and you're trying to find a new way to approach it. And what we'll be painting today is this Primaris Lieutenant from the Indomitus box. We'll be doing him in Deathwing colours because, well, it's my lieutenant. I'll paint him the way I want, to be honest with you. And if you're thinking, Josh, are you going to paint anything else apart from or Indomitus Crusade box? Then the answer is no. No, I'm not. All right. Well, anyway, that's the case. So here we go. Without further ado, let's crack on. Some of these points you may have heard before, and a few of them are a little bit generic to the general productivity videos you see on YouTube, and I am sorry for that. But they are still helpful, and it's a good way for us to start so we're all on the same page. The first one is start at the end. Set yourself some goals. I know that's generic, I know everyone does that, but I think it's important to reiterate it here because the goals themselves are obvious in some cases, but less obvious in others. My first example is the obvious one, a finished army that looks nice. That's the most obvious one in the world, and that's fine. We all want that. But a less obvious one are the smaller ones that you set along the way that you will unfortunately have to do yourself. So it could be as simple as you just want to finish the armor of this one squad, or you just want to do all the flesh of this one unit, or you just want to paint this one character, or you just want to do the bases, for example. It could be as simple as that. But those small goals all do add up to the overall picture of having a finished army. And I think they're really important, and it's a really important one to state right now at the beginning. You don't need to just think of the end game. Also think of all the points along the way that will get you there. And the moment you can chart your progress using those, that will help you a lot, I find. My second one, allocate time. Again, we're sticking with the generic ones for the time being, but I think these are still useful. If you know you've not got a lot of time to paint, it could just be one day a week, one day in the weekend, just an afternoon or just an hour, and you know you've got that time, block that time in and make sure you stick to it. And if you only know you've got that much time, this is where it gets a bit more specific to painting. Know what you can do in that time. So if you know you've got a whole day and you want to have a little play around and keep things chilled out, then by all means do that. But if you know you've only got an hour or two, and you know you very specifically want to get this one thing done. So again, the example of I just want to get this one model's armor done, or I just want to do this one squad's shading. Block that in if you know you can do it in that time. Sit down and carry on with that, because that will help get you a little bit further along the way. And sometimes, life happens. Not sometimes, life does happen. Sometimes you might have to go off and do something else. Sometimes you might get dragged away. Sometimes plans change whilst you're midway through something else. And if that happens, that's fine. Just put down your brushes, block out some time later on, and then get back to it and start where you left off. That's another thing. Step 3, another generic one here. Give yourself space. Now I know again, this is one of those very generic ones where give yourself a place to work. But it is obvious. With painting, obviously, you do need space to do these things. You can't just paint anywhere. You do need somewhere that's both flat and stable, that you've got decent light. It's quite a high maintenance thing. But even if you've got a shared space, so it could be a kitchen table or a dining room table, or somewhere that other people might need to use, a bit of communication here. Let them know that you're going to use it or that you want to use it. Give yourself that time and that space, and set that space up as your painting space. I'm quite lucky because I have desk space that I can dedicate to it, even at home. And what helps me is knowing that I can always just go there and start. But that might not be the case for everyone, I am aware. But the moment you designate in your mind somewhere that is designed to be a painting space, a creative space, if you will, that will give you a bit more of a reason to go back to it, because you will always treat it like it is your painting space. And you will treat it like it's somewhere that you go to keep building on what you've already done and get your army finished. So now we're going to move on from the general points onto the more specific points now. And the first one is one that helped me a lot, and that is pace yourself with your army at every step. We all like to get our boxes and boxes of new toy soldiers, open them all up, build them all up. But then that leaves you with lots of grey models all over the table and lots of sprues. What I'd say, and this has helped me, start with the units that you want to paint and start with them one at a time. So you get your first squad. For example, if you're doing Death Guard, you might have bought yourself Typhus, Plague Surgeon, some Plague Marines, some Terminators, tank, etc, etc. Instead of on the first day opening all of those boxes up and building everything, open up one or two of those boxes, so maybe just one box of Plague Marines. Open it up, take everything out, build that squad, spray that squad, paint that squad, finish that squad, then move on to the next one. What I find helps me is that means that I'm pacing myself, and it means that you can see the progress of your army and it feels like you've achieved more in all. Because like I said earlier, a sea of grey models can be very daunting and it can feel like a lot of work. But the other thing about that is that you will always have that draw of knowing there's another box to open up. If you want to open them all up and have a quick look at the sprues, that's absolutely fine. But don't feel like you should dive in and build everything at once, because then it feels like you're going to have to paint everything at once. And that, I think, is what turns a lot of people off. And it does mean that you have what's called the shelf of shame, where you have a lot of armies and a lot of models just spread over multiple shelves in some cases. But it happens. It happens to all of us. It happened to me a few years ago. I'm sure most of you would agree with me. Having one complete squad on the shelf always looks better than having a sea of unpainted models, because straight away it looks nicer, and then you can move on from there and add to it incrementally, and it feels like you've made more progress as well. It's very easy to get very excited and want to build your entire army in a day, but then you're not going to paint it in a day. The other thing which this does help with is that it means that you won't be tempted to start playing games with your army before it's finished. And this is a good way to do that. It will mean that the games you play will scale up the more of your army you finish. So again, to go back to that example of the Death Guard, if you've just got one squad of Plague Marines, you're just playing Combat Patrol for a little while then, aren't you? Maybe as you get things down, you can eventually move up to smaller games of about 1,000 points to 1,500, maybe even to 2,000, depending on how much you are able to get done over the coming weeks and months. It's nice to always have something to look forward to in that respect as well, and it means that you will have a bigger sense of achievement knowing that you've painted more of your army as you get further down the line. My next point is largely in relation to if you're new to the colour scheme or you're new to the models. Test models. Now, what I mean by that is that if you're unfamiliar with the color scheme or the models, sometimes it's a little bit easy to do a couple of models that you're not particularly happy with, throw yourself in, and then get turned off to that color scheme. What will happen, I find, is if you do a couple of models, just troop units, for example, if you're not used to the color scheme, get yourself established with it, get yourself nice and comfortable, nice and familiar, and then go on to painting the rest of your army. This first squad I just mentioned could be your test models, for example. Now, one of the things about that, which is definitely going to help you, because it really helped me, is when you get to the end of those test models, you'll know exactly how much work you need to put into the army as a whole, and how much work you need to put into just certain areas, maybe if it's just characters. And if you do find yourself with a couple of very nice looking, for example, tactical marines, orc boys, or fire warriors, great, that's just one or two units have got some really nice looking models in it. And the rest of them are maybe not quite as elaborate, but at least you know what to do when it comes to your characters, for example. And that gives you a really nice framework as to how much work each of your subsequent units are going to be, and how much work you're going to have to put into the army overall. My next, variating your colour scheme. Now, even if you don't have the largest army in the world, it's still very easy to get bored of painting the same 2 or 3 colours over and over again. A really good way of tackling that, I find, and this is what helps me, is always find places to vary the colour scheme within the army itself. So this may mean that you end up with a slightly more colourful army overall, but it will help keep you focused. If I was to give a really practical example, you could do your Space Marine Tactical Squad with their Rhino Transport. Even though they are using the same colours, the shape of the model is very different, and the colour palette itself does shift ever so slightly. So what you'll find yourself doing is having to wake up a little bit when you go from the Tactical Squad to the Rhino, for example. Another example, an Age of Sigmar example, if you're playing Chaos, and you've got some bloodletters, do your bloodletters, but also do that in tandem with a herald or maybe some blood crushers. Because even though there are some similarities between the models, you will still have to wake yourself up a little bit more when you switch from one to the other. And even though they do share almost the exact same color palette. The extra details on those models are things that you can go and do if you're feeling a little bit bored of just working on the 10-20 man units that you've got on one side, or if you're getting a little bit tired of having to focus so much on doing details, you can just go back to the large unit and maybe just find some layering or some highlighting to do there doesn't need to be quite as specific or quite as intricate as it does on the character. And that will help you keep focused. And also it does come with the added bonus that once you've finished all that and you put your brushes down, you will not have just painted one unit, you will have painted a unit and a vehicle, or a unit and a character maybe. And that is quite helpful when you come to finishing. So here's my penultimate piece of advice. What happens, and this does happen quite a lot these days, especially for Space Marine players, when new models come out that you quite like and you really want. I have a rule for this personally. I will let myself buy the model, but it goes into the queue. And if it's for an army that I'm still painting, what I will do then is I will allow myself one swap. If I want to put him to the top, that's it. When you have your end goal in mind, you have to remember that, was this new model going to be a part of that end goal before it was announced? Or is it only now that you've seen it that you want it? And if that's the case and you do want it and you want to paint it, by all means do that. I'm not going to tell you not to do that. However, I would say make sure that you're getting it to complement what you're already working on. Don't just get it immediately and start building it, because you will end up with just more grey models at that point. Allow yourself to finish the army you have and then think of them as an additional extra, because at the end of the day, your army will be a lot better off if you can finish what you already have and then knowing that you're going to add something else to finish it. And as a side note, for those of you who do struggle to finish armies, it will give you the confidence that you can finish armies as well, because you won't be limiting yourself to just grey models forever, and it will let you get a lot more done in a manner that you are happy with. And now for my final point, and this one is for those of us out there who've had armies on the shelf for years that we don't do anything with, and I don't believe I've got any left now as of the beginning of 2020. But I definitely used to have them for a really, really long time. Now, it's a very simple question you ask yourself. If you've got an army that you haven't painted for a long time, check to see if you're still playing games with it, for one thing. If you are still playing games with it, then I'd say remember what it is that excited you about that army to begin with. It might be the lore, it might be the models, it might be the color scheme. Whatever it was that excited you enough to buy that army, I think go back to that time, and that will help you find some motivation, hopefully. Because when you've got armies that you've done nothing with for years, it's very easy to then get bored, and especially paint armies you haven't painted, I find people stop playing with them early. The best way to want to get back into those armies is to finish them. And if you want to finish them, then my points will hopefully help. But if you know it's been a little while, maybe your paint style has changed and a few other things might have changed, ask yourself the question, do I still like this army? If the answer is yes, then find out what it was that motivated you to do it to begin with, and then use that as your personal jumping off point to start painting again. If the answer is no, what I would recommend doing at that point is checking to see if you still want that army at all. And now this is quite an easy one, and I know people do this already, so it's good to check in with yourself in that respect and make sure that you've only got models that you really want, otherwise get rid of them. Ultimately, you should only be painting colour schemes that you like and that appeal to you. This does change over the years. I don't paint the same colour schemes, I don't even like the same colours that I liked 10 years ago. So I think it's important to always check in to make sure that you do still like the colours that you're painting. If you know you can paint them in a different way that you're more happy with now, keep doing that by all means, but don't feel like you have to limit yourself. So to conclude, to finish an army does require some planning, and it does require some patience and a little bit of structuring your time. But if you do these things, then it will definitely help you. So there we have it. The Lieutenant is now all finished. I think he looks all right. I did the decals and the bases off film as well, because they always take way too long to dry. We would literally be sitting here watching paint dry, which is only interesting for me, because that's what I do with my time. I'm a bit of a weirdo. Anyway, thank you so very much for joining us on this video. If you did enjoy it and you'd like to hear more about this sort of thing, then please like, subscribe, share the video, hit the bell button, all that good fun stuff. And I'll see you next time, but wait. So, back to my face for a quick announcement. So, the chapter I will be doing for Challenge 99 is going to be the Howling Griffins chapter. Yeah, see it there? So, stay tuned for some Challenge 99 updates coming very soon. It's taken a while because it's been quite hard to get all the models. You know, who would have thought getting £400 worth of Space Marines for less than £100 would have been difficult? came as a shock to me. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, and all that good stuff below. And I'll see you on the next time. Goodbye, and have a lovely day.